like to thank Dr. Geist for suggesting earlier that the internet access should be a right for all Canadians, and this actually goes very well along with what the equivalent of the Supreme Court of France has decided in the three strikes matter, which the current administration in France has been trying to impose as a way to punish downloaders. Obviously, finding that free and unfettered internet access should be a right for all Canadians, as preposterous and may sound to some of you right now, as probably free access to education or free access to healthcare might have sounded some years ago, is actually the way to go at it. However, my other question is, good, how do you do this without the infrastructure? So the gentleman from Tech Savvy, I'm sure, has quite a few stories about the problem with the actual fiber. I mean, we're discussing dark fiber, okay. But
it's unusable fiber.
Yeah. So the problem right now is we have companies like Bell who own the telecom, basically the entire telecom network of the country, or largest part of the country, or Rogers and its compadres in other provinces like Videotron and Shaw in the West, who control cable. Basically, these lead to every house. The only other thing that there is right now and has not been tapped yet is internet through electrical wires. I know there have been attempts to do this in the States. It has so far it has failed. But I mean, apart from this, the problem is infrastructure.
The transformers as well.
Yeah. So I mean, this has to be tackled, and I hate to say the word of say government intervention here, because this reeks of socialism. But I kind of wonder who else, besides the government, can go into this business. Who has the clout? I mean, from what I understand, I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting you for as long as well. I'm a relative newcomer to Canada. I came here 9 years ago. I lived in the States before that, and I lived in various parts of Europe. I still cannot figure out how Bell got to do its current network. From what I understand, it was a public infrastructure which they appropriated, or they used. Now Bell is even buying all the former Radio Shack and currently the Source stores. I mean, they own everything from basically devices that you're going to serve the net to the actual content of the net. Do you want that? No, that's scary.
This is
yeah, exactly.
Now, there's a lot of history there. If I look back at what CANet used to be owned publicly. But what I want to say here about your point is that take a look at what Australia is doing. Most people maybe know here that Australia has engaged in major infrastructure build-out. They're putting big money behind it. Some of the money is, they're talking about 43 billion Australian, equivalent of 33 billion American dollars, to connect every household for 200 megabits broadband. This is going to be 51% owned by the Australian government, so it's a whole completely different shift of what their internet is going to look like. Our government's been over there, they know that, and they've seen it. So there are some movement, there is some movement towards changing some of these structures. Okay, I had a couple people here. I think you were first.
Yeah, I'm a market analyst with Brandon Group. I speak to a lot of small businesses quite often, and I really get the impression when I speak of the internet that they feel really constrained by the current state of the internet, where they want to connect branch offices, where they want to get access to the web, and they just can't on the current infrastructure. And then now I'm doing research on green IT, and we start talking about telecommuting and really saving on fuel and really real cost-saving things for the government and for businesses, and it's just not possible on the current infrastructure. Now, going back to what the other guy was saying over there, I'm wondering what's the best way to promote build out of the internet. I mean, I lived in Europe from 2004 to 2007. When I went to Europe originally, their internet connections were about 1/5 the speed of ours. When I left Paris in 2007, you could get 100 megabit access in larger communities, symmetrical 100 megabit access for under 100 Canadian a month equivalent. And I'm just wondering, is government intervention really required, and how do we really get there? How do we get to that point where we can start doing these build-outs?
Well, I'll speak and pass it to Rocky. This is an issue of competitiveness. This is an issue of kickstarting our economy. You know, and I'm not going to take a partisan shot here, but you know, one of the big solutions to this global economic meltdown was that you're going to get a tax receipt to put a deck on your house in your backyard, and that's going to kickstart the economy. And so, if you don't know, you can do that.
That's infrastructure, right?
For God's sakes, like you hear politicians talk, where it's a 21st century agenda, blah blah blah. We had a direction, as Michael pointed out earlier, where there was a public policy that we were going to start to build up, and then it tapered off. And what you're saying in terms of business, and what I'm saying in terms of, you know, minnow trappers in the bush, what before was a luxury is now the bare bones, because our business needs are growing at such a fast rate, and our ability to compete, even within our country, to maintain regions that'll actually remain economically viable. If you don't have that access in other parts of the country, you're not going to get business. It's going to be a simple decision. So the lag and the lack of vision. So and the what to do is the language that's been used tonight is the language to use when you start to engage other people and start to engage politicians. I mean, stick on this issue of innovation. Stick on the ability of competitiveness, because business is not going to be here if they're getting, you know, basically something a little faster than dial-up.
I'm going to somewhat rehash what you just said, I think, at this point.
I read your notes. So
Yeah. 1996-97, Bell and Rogers went somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 megabit per second. Rogers went in 03 to 3 meg. Bell in 04 to 3 meg. In 06 to 5 meg for Rogers, quickly followed by 5 meg by Bell. Competition is going to drive this. So by stifling it, that's the best move Bell and Rogers could do it right now, is because it removes their need to keep investing, their need to keep getting better services. So right now, we need some movement to get that kick-started again. That 4%, it sucks. We need more, we need better, and we need it now. So the only way to do it is what Charlie just said. You have to get competition. That's the only way.
I hate to play contrarian. So yes, of course we want to get competition, but that's actually not a solution. That's saying what we need, but that doesn't tell me how we get competition. I mean, there are ways to try to incent new competition. Frankly, I think we ought to remove foreign investment restrictions, particularly in the wireless space, so that we get Verizon and Deutsche Telekom in here to try to kick TELUS's ass. I mean, it seems to me that not just TELUS, but I mean, the point is, yes, of course we want competition, but a proposal to say to emulate Australia, to spend $40 billion isn't creating new competition, it's just investing in a publicly owned infrastructure, and perhaps that's something to do, but that's not the same as competition. I mean, competition means creating the necessary incentives in the marketplace to incent people to build. And I think that we have to actually take a look at it. There are different kinds of communities in this country. I mean, the truth of the matter is that people who live directly in sort of very densely populated downtown core places, Toronto and Ottawa, some of those places, there's probably enough there that they'll get fiber to the home eventually, although there are kinds of incentives that we could build in there too, around builders and stuff like that, to start building that in within their infrastructure itself. The problem is, once you get outside some of those densely populated areas, there's virtually no incentives because it's just too expensive from the perspective of some of the providers. So either we bring in more providers who want to steal market share, or we create other kinds of public policies that make it more market sensible for them to build in that kind of fiber to home in some of those other kinds of communities. But saying we need competition, yeah, we need competition, but we actually need clear proposals about how we try to achieve that.